Good evening, everybody. Good evening, particularly to Mrs. Tile, Estonia's ambassador to Germany. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the embassy of Estonia, and I've been told we will hear a few things about its history. This is the third event in the series jointly organized between the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society and the Vodafone Institute, called Big Data, Big Power Shifts. And today we will talk about the relationship with big data and governments. So without further ado, I will hand over to Kaia Tael to give us our introduction.
Dear guests, I'm very, very happy to greet you all at the Estonian Embassy. We're happy it's so crowded here. And as I understand, the audience might be even greater through YouTube. So we are very, very proud to serve as a venue for such an interesting and very topical debate in the society. And we are grateful for our partners tonight, Alexander von Humboldt Institut für Internet und Gesellschaft and Vodafone Institute. And we really thank you for the idea to hold an event here. Estonia has indeed established itself as a sort of a front runner in one of the aspects of this virtual world, virtual development, e-government. Hardly a report about those issues passes without mentioning Estonian experience. Some things have been self-evident in Estonia for years and years, which cannot even be imagined in Germany, like wasting no time for your tax declarations, for example. Sadly, the profession of tax advisor never emerged in Estonia. I think you must regard us as a sort of a laboratory experiment with little white mice running around. But we are really happy to be a test case, and that's why also our representative Estonian government advisor for IT, Mr. Sikkut, is here today to tell you more about our experience. But with all our e-services, we only provide the environment for industrial revolution. The revolution itself needs to take place in the industry and by the industries. And that's where Germany comes into play. So we are happy to explore some joint ventures in this area. Facilitate the debate as a startup country, as a country used to promoting new ideas, actually used to navigating unscouted waters in whatever aspect of society. And before I give over to the moderator, I think I need to say a few words in this historic building, the original embassy building of Estonia since 1920 in Berlin, which I believe provides a very good example of believing in the future, of changing history against all odds. As you know, the Baltic states disappeared from the map during the Second World War. We maintained our legal status only in small, isolated pockets in the world. One of those pockets being here, this house. This building belonged to the British occupation zone after the war, and as the Brits and the Americans never recognized the Soviet occupation of the Baltic countries, they never questioned the ownership of this house. So in the Berlin real estate ledger, it always said, the owner, Republic of Estonia, with a small comment, owner not present, Eigentümer nicht anwesend. So for 50 years or so, we were not present, but we didn't have any legal difficulties after our revolution in 1991. So we existed here virtually for 50 years. Virtual world has a value of its own for Estonia, and we feel comfortable in this world. It has very real implications for the real life. And sooner or later, everyone will need to learn to accommodate with this virtual development, with this revolution. So the more thorough and instructive and interactive the debate, the better for the future. So I wish you all a very intriguing evening and every success with big data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaja Theil. We will now get introductory remarks from David Deisner, who is the Director for Strategy and Programs by the Vodafone Institute.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you all very warmly, also on behalf of the Vodafone Institute for Society and Communications. And I'm delighted to say that we are, alongside the Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society, one of the two organizations facilitating this exciting debate tonight. First and foremost, I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for your generous hospitality. I think it's a privilege to host this event in cooperation with the Estonian Embassy as well. And we are most grateful to be your guests here tonight. We could not think actually of a more suitable venue, since Estonia has, as you just mentioned, for very good reasons, become emblematic for digital transformation and a successful and actually sustainable e-government infrastructure. What has commonly been referred to as E-Stonia, a comprehensive and user-oriented set of digital public services, has become an indispensable part of every citizen's life in Estonia, and it is widely accepted and appreciated by the public. And I think it goes without saying that many countries in Europe, and Germany in particular, can learn a great deal from Estonia when it comes to digital innovation in the public sector, despite the fact that the conditions for this digital transformation, as you've just referred to, have been unique in Estonia. And of course, also Estonia is a very small country compared to Germany, but nonetheless, we think you can learn quite a lot from Estonia. Actually, we at the Vodafone Institute conducted a piece of research 2 years ago and visited various institutions in Estonia and saw how they did it, how they implemented all these services, and how they reached the acceptance of the wider public. And it's actually quite impressive, as you just said, that it really has become a totally normal aspect of everyday life for every citizen to do everything online over the STEE platform, doing the tax declaration and many other things, registering a new company, or even, which we found most astonishing, getting married with your mobile phone, which is actually possible. Want to be as romantic, but it's actually possible. Today's event is actually, as you just heard, the third one in a series of events entitled Big Data, Big Power Shifts. The purpose of this series is to explore the impact of data analytics on society and politics and political decision-making. The past two events focused on big data in sociological research and big data in medicine and the insurance business. Today's presentations and debate will focus on the government's use of big data. What are future developments for the use of small and big data in the public sector? What are drivers? What are barriers? And what are problems? Without a doubt, there is great potential for big data in policy making if you think, for example, of the efficient allocation of resources, traffic management or energy supply, or simply the improvement of processes within political or public institutions. There's growing evidence that more systematic use of data leads to more effective policymaking and more efficient delivery of public services. A report by the McKinsey Global Institute estimates possible efficiency savings for Europe's public sector of $150 billion from adopting big data solutions. But it's not only about efficiency or effectiveness of processes, it's also about the evaluation of political measures. Today, governments very often launch new policies or public initiatives or campaigns on rather thin empirical evidence. For example, will the new form of taxation incentivize a behavioral change which is in the public interest? Is the new regulatory or the new regulation really efficient in reducing CO2 emission? Or you might think of many other use cases. In many cases, the evaluation of political measures is being delivered only years after the implementation. But in an age in which patterns of information flow and mass behavior can be analyzed and understood much more quickly and accurately, thanks to billions of data crumbs being produced every day, the standards for measuring the effectiveness of political action will eventually become stricter. Sooner or later, one might say, big data will bring about a new and more radical empirical turn through near real-time evaluation of political actions, as citizens are also tired of so-called scientific proof, which nowadays seems to change every day. So rather than spending taxpayers' money on speculative grounds in a data-driven society, that might be the vision, there will be fast and efficient forms to measure any government by the promises it makes. However, this data-driven development raises some important political and ethical questions, of course. What are the new data sources that should be used by governments? Who are, and also who owns these data? Who can use it and under which circumstances? What changes are needed for better use of big data for governments? I'm certainly not the one who is invited tonight to reflect on these questions, since we have much more knowledgeable experts here in the room. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the presentations of two knowledgeable experts in the field, Mr. Siim Sikkut, the National ICT Policy Advisor in the Government Office of Estonia, and Dr. Dirk Mahnkopf, who is a specialist for big data and analytics at Cisco. The presentations will be followed by a discussion moderated by Professor Jeanette Hofmann, who kindly agreed to do this tonight. Thank you very much. Who's the director of the Alexander von Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society. I wish you all an inspiring and insightful evening and fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David Deisner. And we start now with our two keynote speeches. The first one will be by Dirk Mahnkopf, who is a big data specialist at Cisco.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this warm welcome. Let's start in this beautiful old historic building to another old, maybe historic building. This is Cisco in Berlin. Who has ever heard about Cisco? Ah, a few, that's good. Cisco was really a new company, founded in 1984. Meanwhile, we have around about 70,000 people. In Germany, we have around 1,000 people. And why we are so successful? The answer is we love every IP package. And we are growing with the internet. And in Berlin, we have this historic building. And I have really new news. Our CEO in January had a meeting with Angela Merkel, and now we decided to announce this, that we will invest over the next 3 years around about $500 million in Germany, mostly for education in our network academy. Okay, thank you. Okay. Then invest in Open Berlin and more startups, and then invest into security and invest in smart cities, in rail, healthcare, and so on. And at the moment, we are looking for use cases, and we will focus in the first phase on education. And this is Cisco. We have 3 main areas. The first area is data center, then we have collaboration, and the third one is security. Let's start with big data. And Berlin is a beautiful place for a marathon, and somebody is preparing marathon. And this is a linear tracking device, and this is a tracking from a short run. And the problem is, at the beginning, he's really weak. Any idea why? Any idea? He's thirsty. Okay, maybe. The problem is this is only one source of data. This is only a device, a small collecting the straps. And if you have more data, you can find out the answer. This is the second device. And now you see, oh, there are small hills. And then you have GPS data. This is also based on GPS. And then you see, okay, the same hills here. Then you have the pace, which is the speed. And then you have the heart rate. And then you have weather data. And then you have wind data, and so on. And that means, and this is the next definition of big data, if you have more data from different sources, then you have a better view. You have visualization, and then you find the answer. And this is the way big data goes. We have a lot of different definitions about big data. The most well-known is the 3 V's, which means volume, velocity, and variety. Different sources with speed and a volume more than one. And this is the definition. And this is the base for all. And big data, if you think, yeah, it's only funny for homework, this is an example for Switzerland. And this is from Swisscom. And they make traffic planning based on mobile phone data. If you go to Switzerland and you have a mobile phone, you will connect to the network, and then you can see where you are going. And yeah, so here you see the Switzerland people, they are in the middle of the land on vacation. The French one are blue, the yellow one are yellow, and the Italian one are green. And this thing, yeah, makes sense. But the next is traffic planning. You see the speed and the average speed and where you have traffic jams and so on. And based on this data, you can make traffic planning and much more things. Traffic controls and so on. And it's an interesting beginning of the discussion. Is it allowed to track your data? We can discuss it later. But you can use this data. You have geographical maps. You have the data from your own devices. Maybe that they don't know who is the owner of this device. But they know there is a mobile phone moving. And then they can analyze it, and then they can visualize it. Big data is not really new. It's driven by a few technologies, which are Hadoop, in-memory, visualization, and analytics. Hadoop, this yellow elephant, is like a symbol for big data. Hadoop is very, very common in this area because it's open source software. It's free. You can download it, work on your computer with the system. It's developed by a community of free programmers, which means no license fee to a big company, nothing. You can download it, work with it. And this is the base for big companies like Apple, iTunes, like Amazon, they use it, like Yahoo, like a few more. Facebook Facebook, they are also really huge. And this is the platform to store all this data, cat videos, and so on. Second one is in memory. Most of our IT today is based on storing data on disks, which is very limited on speed. And now they use another model, storing data in memory. And if you move from disk to memory, you have much more speed in working with this data and so on. Number 3 is visualization, which means if you have a lot of data and you have geographical maps and so on, it's much more easier to understand what's in the data. There are a lot of techniques to visualize data, and this is an example where you can see maybe cities in I think it's Brazil. And number 4, it's analytics. Not analyzing what was good, what was wrong in the past, analyzing and make a forecast what can be next. What can happen if the temperature in your car is too high or anything else. And this is the new market for students called data science. A lot of companies are searching for data science, and these people they should know how to bring business people and statistics and mathematics together, and this is a big challenge. And all of them together, they are the base for big data, working with data and making results. And number 4 of these V's are value. That means let's have an outcome of this data. And if you go to this outcome, then we have this study from McKinsey. This is the base for big data discussion. I think it's written in 2011. And here you see for the Europe Public Sector Administration, 250 billion. It's a lot of money in Europe, what they can save with big data. And these are big numbers because they like to sell their big consulting contracts. And if you go in deep, you have a lot of things where you can go deeper and find examples where we see big data. Number 1, I think, very popular also in Germany with use cases is crime prevention and public safety. Let's find the bad boys. Number 2, productivity in public sector. If you see, especially in Germany, examples, they are focused on improving productivity, smarter processes, and so on. Number 3 is reduction in cost, fraud and errors, maybe tax frauds and so on. A big market for bad boys, and you can find them if you have or if you analyze tax data. Transparency, open data, planning processes, not the old way building something in the neighborhood and nobody is involved, like Stuttgart 21. And next point is data available to that citizens and organizations can make more informed discussions, not buying the unknown box. Emergency management. You see an example for emergency management when something happened. Education, distance learning, not in Germany but in other countries, maybe Australia or so on, and then it's not necessary that you move every day to school and back, so you can do it with a telepresence or so on, and optimize traffic management and safety, as you have seen. These are examples where government can create services, and they do it and they will do it. And these are 2 examples. First is an example, risk terrain modeling. I also have seen it in Germany in 2 installations, Munich, Oberhausen, and a few more. I'm from Bonn, and we have a big problem with home braking. and the police, they are unable to catch the people, but now they try to find out when it's which are the bad areas and when it's at the time that these people are on the way. And for this they use statistics and they have software. A very good collection of US examples are behind this homepage. There are a few hundred projects with a short description and which are performing, which are not performing, and what they are doing. If you have a little bit of time, you can look into it, and it's very interesting. Going back to Germany, this is a project in Cologne. Yesterday they had Carnival in Düsseldorf. Normally it's sunny in Cologne, hopefully. But from time to time we have a river, Rhine, and we have a little bit more water, and then they have built a big data platform for flood management. It's not translated because it's only available in Germany, and they analyze satellites, they analyze weather, because they have more than one river. They have River Rhine, but this River Rhine, the water is coming from Mosel and a few more rivers. And so they need to know what's going on. And they had a flood level which is 10 meters. And the problem is that the city is 80 centimeters below 10 meters. Which means if they have 10 meters and 1 centimeter, they have 81 centimeters in the city, or more if they have a higher flood. And every 10 years it's coming, and now they built a platform also including social data, which means Twitter data, Facebook data, and so on, to see what's going on in the city and what's going on in this area, because flood can be very dangerous if you see it on the pictures. A second example is this from Arbeitsamt, unemployment, to give them more chances. It's a data center project to collect all this data and then to give people the chance for better jobs. And at Cisco, we also have projects. Number one is for security. Maybe that you had heard 2 weeks ago, a hospital, they had to pay bitcoins to get their data back because this was encrypted by fraud. And we have, together with another company called Splunk, we have solutions to prevent hospitals or other companies from attacks, from outside hacking attacks and so on. And number two, with the actual situation is we have containers, still not ship containers, and we will integrate video and healthcare translation and so on in these containers. Why into containers? Because you can move them. And Hamburg is the first city. They have ordered a few of them, and so they are in place, and we can help refugees to get in contact with medical and to get in contact with home. We also see a lot of development in, especially in Hamburg, in smart city cases. You see here mainly the port, but then also lighting, traffic, and so on, government and parking and so on. Everything is driven by a thin bridge. And this thin bridge is on the left side, on the right side, or from your side. The problem is they have this port, they will grow, but the port is in the middle of the city. And now they have two options. First, enlarge the port, reduce the city, which is not an option. And number two is optimize the traffic in this port. And the problem is that they have this bridge, and every traffic have to go over this bridge. And so they are on the way to optimize the steering over this bridge with a lot of sensors when are ships coming and going out and so on. And then you have smart lighting and a lot of things. And you find everything in our innovation center. Our innovation center here in Berlin, they have a lot of sensors. And then now they try to learn what's coming from the sensors, what's in, what can you reduce the heat when you are in this, when you have people in this building and so on. And these are the ideas, and we are on the way. Any questions?
Actually, thank you very much for your talk, for your very interesting talk. And if possible, we would like to postpone questions to the discussion we have after the second keynote. So we now welcome Siim Sikkut from Estonia.
All right. Well, good evening. Let me actually start by asking, who has been to Estonia out of you? Very cool, quite a few hands, all right. To everybody else, I have news for you. You actually are in Estonia. This is Estonian territory right here, so welcome. Welcome to Estonia, all right. First of all, thanks for coming. It's very intriguing for us to be here and talk on this great topic. I will briefly divert my speech in a way. So the whole event is about big data and so forth. I'll put this gentleman right back. But I want to really actually start briefly using another term, and I'll explain why. In Estonia, we have a joke. We don't have big data in Estonia. There's not enough of us to really have big data, right? In a country of 1.3 million people, there's always so much data to go around. But I actually agree with the former speaker saying that it's not about the size of it. It's actually about exactly using different types, different structures, and so forth. So, but let's use the word data. And I will try to very briefly sum together actually 15 years of experience of building a digital government in Estonia and look at it from a data perspective. Our ambassador actually did a pretty good job on actually giving you already hints of what I will talk about. So, for example, she said taxes. I'll talk about taxes. The bottom line is, in Estonia, we've been building a digital government for a few reasons. One of them being that this is the way we see that we, as a government, can provide a much better service for our people, our residents, our companies. And we do keep building more because we see really that digital services allow them to lead a much more efficient and easy life. For example, yes, you see the guys in the sauna. We like to go to the sauna a lot. It's a cold country. But even if you're there, you can get your taxes done, right? Even if you're there, you can start a company and it will be up and running in the next few hours because we do use data a lot to make the services easy to use and comfortable and fast. With taxes, the trick is very simple. We actually don't ask you to submit your tax declarations as physical persons. We rather ask you to review them. So basically, we have the data in our hands through the year anyway, because as people are employed in companies, well, the companies pay the tax every month. So we know how much you made, how much tax you paid, and so forth. We don't ask you again. We just basically say, look, if it's tax day, you log in, you look, okay, these are my records, next, submit. Most people are done in 5 minutes, if they're slow, right? Most people actually, it's like 2 minute affair. They just go through, they're done, it's tax is done. No accountants, no tax advisors, no fees involved, right? Now the trick is that actually it could be even simpler, and I'll explain about that. I mean, actually it could be automated. So the next year or two, we would like to make it this way, that if it's tax day, we just send you a text and say, hey, based on our records, that's the outcome. If you're unhappy, then you go online and you basically review and you think, if you want to check it out. But actually, why ask in the first place? But so far we do. Oh, the other thing, establishing a company. Our record is actually 18 minutes. So this 18 minutes was from the point when the person logged in our business portal online, and up to the point when the company was legally established. In 18 minutes, they were in business. They were able to bill other companies, to contracts, all the stuff. How is it possible to contract it, all that together? Is because, again, we reuse data. All the checks that all different public authorities have to do, for example, can the particular person establish a company in the first place, right? Do they have the, are they legally responsible? Or do they have any business? Yeah, okay, can they actually exactly be in business? Do they have any violations in the past, for example? All this is done by data automatically, very, very fast. And the outcome is, you're in business. Exactly, the service is very fast and convenient for you. And so, people like this a lot, because exactly, it makes their life better, every day. But in government, we like it too, because we get the other part of it. So data and using data and offering digital services allows us to be very efficient in our operations. This has been very much the driving force of digital government in Estonia, efficiency. We are a very small country. We don't have much natural resources besides wood and nice, forest, besides forest and nice sort of nature, right? And we don't want to tax up people high enough. But we want to be a country for social welfare, defense, the whole spiel, right? So our point is that we have to be very efficient with the resources we have to use as a government. And again, digital has been a way for that. The examples I have here actually very much are the ones that you brought out as examples in your sort of presentation. But for example, let's take crime prevention or public safety. We did, close to 10 years ago, something very simple. We brought internet access to all the police cars. So basically patrols on duty could have access to in real-time access to databases. They could, for example, run a number plate, check if there should be any suspicion, for example, to stop the car. For example, the particular driver or the user of the car might have a past of drunk driving. So again, that's worth it to check them up again. Once we did this, again, not even much analytics, but really access to the data, right? We immediately, in just a few months, had a 50% increase in stolen cars being found, for example. So simple access to data, immediately we had basically safer streets as an outcome. Or the other example, this is very small, but basically resource planning, emergency management. So these days, if there's a fire ongoing in Tallinn, our capital city, immediately analytics is run and sort of even visualized to see what kind of resources deploy. Where is the nearest sort of fire engine, for example? How to get there the fastest with an ambulance. Again, we were able to provide with a bit of analytics a much more simpler service. Instead of somebody at the end of the phone trying to do that all by heart, in the head, the machines tell us what is the best way to really effectively react. Sorry, I can be there. So, how to pull it off? So, I want to just basically emphasize again, perhaps the things that my ambassador mentioned. And this is really about what is the role of government as we see it in Estonia. Our key role, of course, we have to offer the services, we have to develop them. But we see that we are in an environment business, in an infrastructure business. We are there to provide the right sort of legal and technical environment for all different agencies to offer the services on, but also for the wider society. And I'll explain what I mean. Complicated picture, but in a nutshell, the fact that we are able to, the reason why we're able to reuse data, for example, in tax declarations, is that we have a government-wide framework, a platform for that, which is called X-Road. Basically, all government systems, all government databases have to adhere to common protocol for data exchange, of secure data exchange. There's no single big database where we pull the data. Rather, we use information from an original source. This is basically our government in action every day. All sort of different data flowing back and forth as services are being provided, as analytics is being done. But the other reasons besides the technical platform is that there's actually a legal framework behind. In Estonia, we have a simple rule, which is called, some of you might know this, once only. In Estonia, basically the government is not supposed to ask you again if they already have some data on you. That we shouldn't, we are not even, basically we're not allowed to. If you told us something, we should reuse it from an initial source like that based on X-Road, and as a result the service is simpler for you. That was the example of the tax declaration. We have your tax records, we shouldn't ask you again. We should rather provide you a faster service with that knowledge that we have, reusing the data essentially. But the other part, of course, what it comes down to is that there has to be the right trust and security environment. So the point is that even if we are able to connect all different parts of government together technologically and legally, then the same sort of law also sets us limits. So basically, the framework is such that all the connections can happen based on a need-to-know basis, or allowed to know. If I, as a person, want my data to be shared, for example, also with a third party outside the government, I can allow that effectively. For example, if I want a bank to have an access to some sort of my public records. But fundamentally, it boils down to one sort of particular legal aspect, which we hold very dear, which is that people and companies own the data, not the government. And so from these kind of frameworks, the rest can also follow into technology. And I'll give you an example. In Estonia, we do have a nationwide health record. So whenever I go to see a doctor, he or she has access to my medical history. So basically the idea is that, again, I should save time as a person, as a patient. They don't have to redo all the analysis necessarily. But at the same time, we also hope to save some money on the sort of health system side. Now, in order not this kind of health record and the sensitive data to be abused, then we built in, from the principle that people own the data, a small technological trick. In my online health portal, I can block access to my health record, to the doctor, or even my wife for that matter. But I control who has access to my data, even if by default it will be shared for public benefit and my own personal service benefit. Similarly, we have control about, let's say, who has been accessing. We have a log function there. So I can see, let's say, which doctor when had, looked into my stuff. If they had no reason, I can go to data protection inspection and, make a claim. And we have had nurses fined, some policemen laid off, if they looked into stuff they shouldn't have. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot we can do technologically. There's a lot what we can do for the service, for the benefit of government efficiency and people's efficiency with data if the right frameworks are in place. And so basically exactly privacy and security needs, as we see, at least in Estonia, don't have to be an obstacle. They can actually enable us to reuse data and do more with the data for the benefit of people. And on that note, I just have to say this. So a lot it also comes from that, the trust comes from that we have a secure means of authentication for both the people's side. If they log in, us as government, we know that it's really them logging in, right? So there's an ID card, basically personalausweis, or equivalent mobile SIM card, we call it mobile ID. If I use that, if I log into my, for example, health portal, again, the government has the best assurance possible, it's really me there. And the other way around, also all the public officials are authenticated. So we always know in the logbook who was really looking at my stuff, because that's the way they have to do it. And it's based on advanced cryptography, based on advanced procedures, there's no way that they can fake that part. So again, nice, secure devices framework is what allows us to make the most of data. Now, I'll briefly say what's next for us, just as a teaser. I think I already hinted a bit with the example of tax, where I said that, look, actually the tax report could be automated. I could just send you a note saying, look, that's your tax outcome. If you're happy, don't do anything. But I mean, I think the principle applies in a wider sense. And by using and reusing the data that we have, and possibly even combining it with additional sources outside of government hands, we can do even a better service, being really proactive and make even people's life even more efficient and easy. I mean, I can give an example of babies. When a baby is born in Estonia, actually the government knows almost immediately, because the hospital makes an entry to population registry. Basically, the kid has a number before they have a name, right? And the other thing is that based on that, actually, government almost knows the next sort of few steps that the parents will take. They have to name the child. They most probably will put the kid in a kindergarten queue. They will apply for some benefits, all these things. These are available online. All these sort of services are available online. But at the same time, should we actually ask them to go online and do the stuff anyway? They want to be there with the baby, right? So if we know that the baby was born, the number gets, the population registry entry gets made, we could just actually send an email to the parents and say, thank you for the new citizen. What's the name? So basically turning us around and also reusing sort of different bits and pieces of data we can automate in the back end. Why ask for application for a benefit? We could just send you basically the money to your bank account, right? And well, we've even joked that we can even offer you suggestions for names if you want, based on a little analytics. But we probably won't go there. But what's the most popular this month for a boy? And so the whole idea is that exactly to make people's life even easier. And it doesn't, of course, just concern us as citizens or sort of regular people in that sense, but it could be also especially for entrepreneurs. We are currently developing a system based on a tax office that if companies just transact electronically, basically they just use an online banking, transfers back and forth, they don't transact with cash, let's put it this way. Even if it's cards, it's okay. Basically, their bank record is the financial bookkeeping. There's nothing more there is to that. So out of that, we could actually, if the company gives access to the tax authority to the bank record, you would not have to submit any more declarations or basically paperwork to the government ever again. We have the access, we can do the tax declarations for you, we can do actually annual reports for you, or the custom stuff, whatever. You would benefit from, again, much easier service. You don't need an accountant or an accounting team. As an SME, as a micro company, which many Estonian companies are, they love it, the idea, because again, it actually saves them immediate money, gives them efficiency. And it doesn't have to stop at the government side. I mean, if we have this sort of platform in place, actually it could go even further. We could have real-time transactions, real-time money flowing back and forth between the companies, also B2B, right? And for that radical efficiency, companies, again, the whole economy actually saves much more. Is able to spend money and time in places where it leads to growth, not just accounting costs. And so basically, we see that digital could be very much a tool for growth in a wide sense by using data and allowing different data bits to be connected together like that between companies. And one more thing about the future, I won't stop long here, but I just also want to say that so far, all digital governments, all digital services usually have stopped at the borders. In Estonia, the same way. There's 80 kilometers between Finland and Estonia, between our capitals. But still, if companies go from one market to another, that's basically a lot of papers they have to carry around. Stuff that they don't do at home, by the way. So if they go to Finland, they just basically have to prove, for example, that they have the right to represent a particular company from Estonia. Then the Finnish government takes the knowledge, types some stuff, types this knowledge into the computers, and again, company's good to go. But why? There are two digital governments, and we have people traveling with papers between them. If we connect the governments, well, again, perhaps people don't have to travel at all. We just basically, if Estonian company wants to do business in Finland, they just ask, go to the Finnish authority, who then makes a data request to Estonian government, and everything's done. Again, by simple use of data across the borders between administrations, the single market actually works, right? Everybody's better off. So there's a lot we want to do, and we already started working with our neighbors, really connecting sort of the government databases and infrastructures like X-Road together. And it doesn't have to be just with Finland. We are happy to work on European level as well, which we actually do with Commission partnership. I will end by making just very few statements about what I was asked to make. So what would that all mean from point of view of power relations, if I can make this sort of leap? Well, to my mind at least, what it effectively means is that first of all, in some ways, governments are more powerful. We are able to much better perform, right? At least for the more value for the same money at least. But at the same time, what it fundamentally means is that still people, I don't want to say the user, but people whom we are doing the services for, they really become the centerpiece, because it's really after them by which we design and target the services based on the data that we use. So obviously actually they start to, and their sort of needs start to run the game for us, not just some abstracts of thinking, okay, what could the people need? Well, based on data we know, that sort of needs become more powerful. But the other thing, what definitely happens, is that engineers become powerful. And this has been very much the backstory of Estonian actually digital development, is that our government, our political leaders have said, we trust our engineers. Even if some people politically have been afraid that there could be cyber risks, there could be privacy risks, but let's really talk to them. Let's really talk to the best sort of minds out there in Estonia or abroad. Let's figure this out. And so this engineering knowledge is where X-Road came from. This engineering knowledge is where sort of our digital identity came from, which many people at the time said, look, no, this cannot be done. And this engineering knowledge doesn't have to stop in the government. For example, in Estonia, we're lucky to have a very active startup scene, which is called Estonian Mafia. Why not work with the best of them there? Also, they become more powerful as the influencers of where does the government go. And more, actually, our services, the standard of our services, the quality of our services is compared to the best ones in the private sector. So again, that's influence. And my last slide says that if people become the center point, it doesn't just have to mean the people physically in your country or the usual sort of range of suspects. In Estonia, we started a new program called e-residency. It's been 1.5 years running, so we issue our digital identity to anyone in the world, really, who wants to use our nice, easy digital services. So the more and more we see other countries not wanting to join the wagon. So if that happens, it's not just your citizens who become powerful, actually your user base, wherever they are in the world. So taking this into political game and considerations is what I think what we'll be evolvingly seeing in different countries. So the population, though the populace, if you wish, becomes much more virtual in actual sense of the world. I will stop here. I will say that if you want to learn more, you're always welcome to visit us virtually or physically, and we welcome any questions and debate. Thank you.
So thank you very much for both of your contributions. I will confine myself to 2 questions so that we can quickly open the discussion to the audience. The first one actually concerns the power question and perhaps privacy, data protection. You both emphasized very much the gains in efficiency, and at the same time you actually said that everybody becomes more powerful. There is no shift, it's not a cake that we redivide, we all gain power. Are you really sure about this? Is there no loser in this process?
Well, I'm an optimist. See, again, I'm speaking from Estonian experience. It's very hard for me to see who has been losing from all of this, power-wise or otherwise. Especially as, something to understand, for example, when it comes to privacy, for example, Estonian people, why they love these solutions so much is 2 things. First of all, they do really bring you value. And if something brings you value, you do take a serious look at, let's say, the cost and the benefit calculation. And as long as, let's say, the safeguards are there, like I talked about the legal protections that I always own my data, I can control it technologically, then again, people are happy to move forward with that. So that's why I mean that exactly in our end, it seems to us that we figure out a way to make everybody win in the end.
Let me rephrase my question. According to your observations, do you think that people value privacy less for the sake of gains in efficiency? Is it that they have less problems with giving away their data, say, to the tax office or to other public authorities because they save time and don't have to care? Is that what you see when you talk to customers?
I think I see it every day. If you go to social media, you give all or a lot of private data for a little value. And so it's the same game with publics. But in publics, you have regulations. In Germany, you have a strong regulation, what can be done and what not. If you send your private ideas, messages, videos, and so on, maybe to Facebook, you have no control. I think that's the difference.
The difference to how it used to be before we started digitizing interactions?
Yeah, this is, if you compare 5 minutes for text, I need 5 days. That's one value, and they have all my data. And I have to declare it, and this is one example. And I hope that we have losers at the bad boys to prevent crime and all these things and tax fraud and so on. And I hope that there will be these users. And if you go to the medical areas, at the moment, the medical area is focused on the past. Because we have Krankenkassen and they have a lot of data and they do nothing.
With those data?
With all this data. And now we need activities to use this data to make a forward and to show you what's going on if you live in this kind of a... Yeah.
Predictive analytics?
Yeah, this is predictive analytics maybe for healthcare.
Mm-hmm. What do you say about that? You see people valuing privacy less than they used to?
Well, I can't comment for Germany, right?
No.
But in Estonia, at least, it's never been an issue, really. I mean, first of all, whenever we started really with the digital government and services that I was explaining about, actually the sort of right safeguards in terms of legal and frameworks were placed immediately as well, right? So it was not like we were innovating something sort of in a gray area and then some regulation came. We immediately saw that we have to make sure that the trust is there, so the trust environment, but to move forward, and we also provide the value, right? And I think there's one more thing I want to say on the note is that you mentioned sort of social media, for example. I mean, I don't want to demonize social media, but I think there's a lot of understanding that in Estonia is that definitely, I mean, who else is there to trust in the government? In government, at least I have some control about, let's say, how the regulation goes, even if it might be very indirect. I may not always be happy with the outcome, but basically this is still sort of a clear process. Whereas with private sort of companies, the only option is that I can use a service or not. That's my only sort of option, basically.
Mm-hmm. But if you, as you told us, your citizens can sort of block access to data, but surely this is not true for, say, tax information, or is it?
Fair enough. But this is exactly where regulation comes into the game. All these sort of cases where you cannot do that, basically these are defined by the law. So law becomes the basis of, first of all, need to know what kind of data who can have access to. And secondly, also the question, are there any limitations, for example, to me deleting data or not allowing access and so forth. So basically this is, if it's considered a public good, it's limited, yes. But if not, if it's just personal stuff like health would be, you have much more way of control.
Mm-hmm. There's one other related question in that, to that area. Since you are considered the pioneer in e-government, certainly in Europe, is there any sense of vulnerability in your country? If you digitize so much and interconnect so many databases, are you not afraid of people attacking those systems? Because it's sort of, you see this in almost every country, that databases are getting hijacked.
Well, we have had that, and I mean, it's no secret that in 2007, for example, Estonia became the first country in the world to be cyber attacked on a large scale. I mean, these were very simple attacks. They were just brute force trying to take the websites down, disrupt the service, but still. But no, the understanding is that, well, first of all, it's with all the risks, it's the same thing. It's a cost-benefit thing. So if we figure out a way to mitigate, to manage the risks, and we get enough value out of that, then basically, again, so it's a choice to go forward, especially as we see with cyber risks, a lot of them can be managed to, not away, but to a sort of acceptable level. That's why we work a lot on cybersecurity, like putting in place, secure authentication for everybody in Estonia. We work a lot on sort of reactive side, so if something happens, we're able to react very fast. We work a lot with international partners, including Germany, for example, on the NATO frameworks and others, so that everybody will be more secure. So basically, long story short, we have to invest a lot, and we do invest a lot into cybersecurity because the vulnerability theoretically is there, but we invest a lot in order to enable us to be digital, and we see that it does allow that.
Would you confirm that it's a risk-benefit issue? So you have to accept some risks in order to reap the benefits?
Yeah, I confirm. It's an ongoing game, and in the past, maybe 2007, it was easy. But yeah, now we have new ideas how to protect the data.
Mm-hmm. So there's actually a public-private agreement on how to look at these risks and deal with the vulnerabilities that emerge. out of, yeah?
Fair enough, and I can say from our side that we are always very public if something happens or should happen, right? Because with that we see transparency, we see actually also as a measure to ensure this trust. And you know, we never say that, you know, it will never happen. Rather we say it will happen sooner or later. But the point is that exactly, I mean, we just do our best to avoid it, and if it happens, to react really good and fast and sort of secure enough. So.
Yeah, but that is like the toothpaste out of the tube, right? You won't get the data back in once somebody got them.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I think there's another point to that, saying that in Estonian sense at least, when it comes to services, we don't really concern ourselves that much with confidentiality in a way. What we really mostly protect is integrity, which means that, you know, data would not get changed or tampered, right? So, and that comes a lot from thinking that, for example, my health record, if my health record goes public, I might have a bit of inconvenience. But if somebody changes my blood type, no, that's bad. So that's why that's again a risk approach. We just consider the risk of integrity the highest one. Of course, yes, we do our best for confidentiality as well. But at the end of the day, some things can be let go if needed, but it doesn't go as far. It doesn't go as far. These are theoretical cases only.
This is certainly an interesting perspective. I wonder whether the audience agrees with that the confidentiality might not be that much of a problem. But before I open to the public, there's a second question I'd like to address, and that concerns the future. Both of you talked about what you're doing right now and gave a bit of an idea of what might be coming. But what do you think we will get to see in, say, 10 years of time? Where do you both see you, your company, and what kind of services you offer, and you, your government? What do you think you will be doing in 10 years' time?
Yeah, hopefully successful. You never know in this fast-moving area. If you look back 10 years ago in the computer industry, a lot of good names, now they are gone. I hope that Cisco is on the right way. We will move from products to services, web-based or cloud-based services. That means, has anybody used WebEx? Yeah, it's a Cisco cloud-based service. Yeah, that means we have an IT infrastructure in the background, and the new idea, we have a partnership with Apple, makes it really easy, which means press only one button on your iPhone, and then you can make a video call with somebody else, and you need a lot of technology in the background that it works.
And in terms of bigger sort of visions of infrastructure, the Internet of Things is coming. Where do you see your company in that field? Or what will be the field after?
We will focus on the IoT, which means Internet of Things, Internet of Everything area, with devices in many things, maybe washing machine and so on, and that they work together. Okay.
I think the sad news to some people is that the government probably has not gone away yet. So big data will not be president probably yet, but 10 years time. But at least, well, I mean, if I say from Estonia's side, we are very much working to make sort of these directions that I mentioned happen. So I truly believe that in 10 years' time we can be out of the way, truly invisible, by use of data in all those transactions that doesn't actually have to take place, and really sort of, you know, made radical changes to people's efficiency in life.
You mean government policy making turn it into an algorithm?
Well, not policy making, services at least. And this is exactly where we don't have to be in there. Policy making and, let's say, information provision, defense, all these areas, these still remain very important. But at least from the services, I see no point why we need to be sort of the obstacle on the way.
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the audience, are there any questions you would like to raise? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Hani. I'm working at the Innovation Center of SAP in Potsdam. And okay, 3 things. One thing, I would like to thank you for this presentation and to show that actually a social state is possible within digital spheres. now 3 things are coming. So one thing to add to the security discussion is there's always a hybrid system possible. That means like you can have a cloud, but you can also have an on-premise system. So you always have a backup. When someone hacks your system and you know that, you can always kind of have the backup of the data you retrieved during a certain time. So you can always like look up if the data was exchanged or something like that. 2 questions to you, to the Estonian system. So one thing you maybe like recognized also, the questions mainly coming from Germany is also always security based. And you said like that the mindset of the people were very open when you started to kind of digitize your government. How did you do that? Like, how did you do this shift from, did they vote for it, or did you like just, you know, set a law?
And the second question?
Oh yeah, the second question is, do you have this IT department within the government, or are you working with a company or freelancers?
So the first question, thank you, first of all. And I think you're quite right with the backups, and this is what I mean by this kind of ability to react fast. I mean, sort of, let's say, having ability to boot up from a sort of other location or whatever sort of backup means, this is part of the plan, right? How to have the contingency plan in place to, if worst comes to worst, theoretical risks, realize how to really then act on them. But your questions, no, we never voted directly, that is. Because I still say that all the sort of, liberties, if you wish, and sort of, basis for digital services are laid by the law. But the regular procedures of parliamentary voting, which is very public and transparent in Estonian case, you can follow and participate in that online and so forth. But yeah, we never had a referendum of sorts, or just public vote like that in a way. But the second question, we do have quite a bit of technical staff in-house, but there's some, to a certain degree. For example, we don't code in-house. So we always work with outside vendors, Estonian or foreign, to basically exactly really develop the systems that are underlying all of our digital government. But the architecture, the project management, so this kind of business knowledge, that's on the government side always, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Secretary Shenko for Eurasian Civil Society Forum. Actually, I adore this Estonian system, e-residency and also e-government. So, and actually, I was also offered to apply for an e-residency of Estonia, but I haven't applied yet. So, my concern is, it works quite well in democratic societies, I suppose. So these digital things. So, how is it to secure that this data wouldn't be abused in non-democratic societies? For example, so I know that a similar system was developed for the Azerbaijani government. And let's put it politically correct, so Azerbaijan has some problems with the human rights and so on. So just like how to be secure that this data wouldn't be abused by another government, still doing good job, doing good business, so, but not to somehow jeopardize people in other countries. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you could both perhaps address this question.
It's always a big fear, like the beginning of fire. Now they found out the first mankind, oh, we have fire and it's dangerous and let's stop it. And it's the same discussion. It can be dangerous, and you are right. And maybe that you know that you are in an area, not this area, but outside, which was also a government with a few problems, which was not so good. And yeah, but you should focus what's possible and be an optimist.
Well, but to me, and let's say we've been asked this question a lot, so it's not a new question at all, right? And to me, you're quite right. It's built on a premise of democracy. It's built on a premise of trust in the government, right? So my answer to you is that, so basically, if this scenario happens, that, for example, Estonia would not be a democracy at all anymore, Well, I think first of all, we have the bigger problems at hand. And secondly, is that so, but what are the odds of that? So basically, it's again, sort of, let's say, the calculation of the risk and the benefit that you have to do. Basically, we don't stop lighting the candles on the Christmas tree because the tree might catch fire. And that's a bigger odd than, for example, okay, in Estonia you don't. So I would say that, odds of that happening are much more bigger than for that, to turn away from democracy. But I think the second half of your question is that you're quite right that technology can be used good and bad ways. Unfortunately, it's up for the particular sort of population or the nation to then sort of figure out, what are they happy with. I cannot speak for the Azerbaijani people. I wouldn't be probably happy there myself. In Estonia, luckily, it's not the case, right? Through transparency, through just ensuring that, the rule of law is kept, that's how we are able to ensure that exactly you can trust us with your data. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Ingolf Pernis from the Humboldt Institute as well. You didn't talk about democracy and voting, and I had heard that Estonia is very often mentioned as one example where e-voting has been practiced and in part practiced successfully. Could you give us a little bit more of information how this runs and what are the problems, if there's any, and how you see the future of e-voting in Estonia?
Thank you for the question. I didn't talk about many things. But basically, the fact I didn't talk about this is, so voting is, in that sense, a very simple procedure. There's not much data involved in that in Estonia, given the topic of today. But I'll answer you. I will answer you. So basically, we've been using internet voting for 8 elections now, since 2005. So basically, whenever you vote for local municipality, national parliament or European parliament, there's an option to do that online. Wherever you are in the world, we had, last spring, we had national sort of parliament elections. So we had about 1/3 of the votes come in online, 2/3 on paper, regular ballot voting. And these were from 116 countries around the world, including Germany, of course. So basically, why we do internet voting is to offer another channel that's very convenient for people to use wherever they are in the world or whatever they try to do or want to do. Paper option is there. Most people still use it, as you heard. But at least, yeah, a critical mass have went for digital one because it's just so much more convenient. Literally voting, well, if you know whom to vote for, is 2-3 minutes of an undertaking. Whereas me going out to the ballot station, on a Sunday, do I want to do that? But I want to still vote. I want to be part of the democracy. So I have a very convenient option for that.
Can I add a question to that? How do you solve this tension between authentication and anonymity of voting?
Well, very easily. So first of all, yes, you have to authenticate yourself and sort of authorize the vote when you go in. But basically, just like in a sort of voting booth, before the vote gets counted, you basically take the sort of the identification part away. So only the votes, and sort of the candidate numbers are basically what you do count. Mm-hmm. So you separate sort of between, the voting file or the data bit in a way.
But that means you cannot recount if anybody doubts the outcome of the election, or can you?
You cannot recount whom did you vote for, but you can recount the set of the votes still, because exactly first of all, you will know how many people were voting and how many votes there have to be, right? So you can match at least even as simple as that, for example. So it's the number, it's the set of the anonymous votes that matter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Larissa, there was somebody behind. Okay.
Hi, I'm Srinivas. I'm a chief data scientist of a smart city startup in Berlin and a visiting researcher from the University in Sussex. I have 2 questions. One is, actually, you made the process of getting an e-citizenship quite easy. I got it quite recently, and it was pretty painless, except I still need to visit Estonia to set up a bank account. So I'd love to visit Estonia, but not just for the purpose of setting a bank account. So when is that going to be removed? And the second is a bit more futuristic. With all this data you're getting, and as a lead on to the question about e-voting, wouldn't it be possible, in the strictest machine learning and AI sense, to predict which politicians are best for the country? Then you don't need voting at all. I mean,
Very good
that would be
question.
much easier. So.
Trust me, there are days where I would love that. Well, I'll start from the first one. So yes, with e-residency, you're quite right. And so the thing is that we always sort of said that we do the e-residency as a startup. So even as a government, we try to work as a startup. We went live when not everything has to be ready. We're building these services with the users. So the good news to you is that the bank account digital opening should be there in just a few months, basically. So the law is already in the sort of pipeline for that. But the other part, well, I'm happy to let you comment. Would you want to have AI suggesting you what's the best prime minister?
No answer.
I think it still depends on your political preference.
My name's Arndt Leining. I'm a PhD student at the Republik School of Governance here in Berlin. And I love what you just said. I mean, I'd love to do my taxes online. Like you outlined, in Germany, they have to snail mail me a passport before I can do it. But when I think about my grandparents, they don't own a computer, they don't own a smartphone, they don't even own a mobile phone, right? And so my question is, what do you do about people who don't own a computer or a smartphone in your country? Do you develop services for them as well, or do you just wait for them to die out?
Which will happen. We don't do that. We don't do that. We are a benevolent government. So, first of all, well, they have always had a service option anyway, so that still lingers on. I mean, they've had the paper option, the analog, if you wish, ever since we restarted as a country. So we haven't taken that away. You can still vote on paper. You can still do your taxes, on paper as well. 4% of people do. So 96% is online. 4% still show up, in a tax office. The other part of that is that our luck has been that we've had a very fast increase of digital literacy, right? So at this point, we have 90% of adults, including elderly, actually online. Of course, in the oldest age groups, it's a bit less than that, 60–70%, but it has increased very fast. And first of all, we put money into training and sort of awareness raising for that with the private and public sector together. But secondly, technology has helped a lot down that line. iPads, let's say tablets, don't use a particular platform, tablets. They're so much more convenient and intuitive, for example, to use, right, than the old PC used to be. So again, these sort of technological advances also help out. We are now studying also, for example, with language technology, could we make sort of voice recognition and synthesis interfaces so that you don't have to, know how to manipulate the device at all, but just by talking, you could actually sort of, try out the service, for example. But down the line, we are very heavily thinking, could we also make services mandatorily online? Because the 4% of, for example, the tax office, 4% of people who go there per transaction, it's very costly. It's very, very costly. So for access reasons, we still keep it, but we are thinking about could there be alternative? So for example, could we offer this way that you can sort of mandate somebody to conduct a service for you? Or if we make them automated, is there a need for service anyway? Or for example, you can somehow have your social worker take care of your stuff or whatever like that. And we are not the first one. I mean, Denmark issued basically laws saying that services are mandatorily online. There's lots of exceptions where you can get out of that. You can still show up and do something on paper. But the point is that it's been done, tried, and we're happy to sort of be the next one in that sense. Because yes, our saturation rate is so high already that keeping the paper analog is getting costly and costly.
Hi, my name is Victoria Dykes. I'm a master's student at the Republik School of Governance. And so as an American living in Germany, I am constantly astounded by the governmental inefficiencies that mark everyday life in this country.
You say this coming out of America?
Yes, and I say that coming from America, which should tell you something. And so when it comes to Estonia, I've talked about this topic with people before and how, what a compelling model they provide, but then the response is always, well, you can't compare Estonia and Germany. The country size is so different, the history is different, and evidently the mindset of the people is significantly different, as evidenced by when you were saying that Estonians are more likely to value integrity over confidentiality, which I don't think you could say for many Germans. And so my question is sort of, do you think that there are any sort of general best practices or lessons learned that could be extrapolated from the experience in Estonia and more readily applied to other countries like Germany?
Thank you for the question. I'll be happy to hear your views on that too, but I mean, I hope so. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So I do think that first of all, yes, it doesn't have to be just Estonian experience. There's lots of good digital practices to go around. We have stuff to learn from others as well, including some pockets of excellence in Germany, for example. So this is a two-way game always, and that's a general answer I'm giving you. I don't see a reason why at least the principles could not be sort of discussed, debated, or considered, and perhaps even applied, whatever the size. And I'll tell you one more thing about the size. We work a lot with the British government. I don't hear any boos. Okay, good. So we work a lot with the British government, and what we clearly found out there was that basically the difference between our governments, besides royalty and stuff, is the number of lines in the database. In terms of functions we provide, in terms of services that we are running, we are very much similar. So basically, in that sense, even more sort of knowledge can be applied.
Yeah, and I agree. In Germany, we have room for improvement.
Thanks very much. I think, as it is so often...
Introduce that.
Sorry. Wolfgang Schulz, Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society as well, and Bredow Institute in Hamburg. As it is so often the case, you start talking about technology and then you recognize you're talking about on cultural issues at the end. And when I imagine a German administration official, my first association is not he wants to make my life easier, but maybe other things. And basically, it's an issue, as I said, on trust. And what I would be interested in is your perception, what about other countries and their mindsets? Are there some allies there in Europe? Or is Germany the country where it's most difficult to implement these kind of ideas as far as you can judge? And was it in Estonia the way that the mindset was this way from the beginning? Or was it a process where you could see, okay, that helps me, and so that's something which is good, and that at the end changed the attitude of administrators as well? Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, this is a warning, I will choke now. But the point is that, so you mentioned sort of the mindset of the civil servants, right? Well, in Estonia, I think the small size helps, because when I go home, the same sort of people I'm trying to do service with, they're my neighbors, they know me. So if I'm doing a bad job and not making life easier, well, they will not like me, and I like to be liked. But on a serious note, well, I think there's a truth to that. I'm not a cultural expert, to be honest with you, first of all, and I think it's in that sense very hard to generalize, right? But I mean, we do see every now and then that, of course, there are some countries, with whom we sort of more easily find a sort of common language, and sort of, with whom we sort of try to, for example, initiate first pilot projects with, and so forth. I'm looking at the ambassador now, how political I can be, but but I think very honestly, I think there are like three digital cultures in Europe. One is the Nordic one, where we clearly belong to, right? Then it's like the sort of, if you wish, like the continental Europe one, right? And then there's the Mediterranean, like, yeah, whatever. So I'm generalizing a lot here, but this is sort of...
It was an invitation to stereotypes, to be fair.
But then there are exceptions. Portugal, very Mediterranean, but very good digitally. So you never know.
Our last question.
Nicholas Talackovic from the Technical University of Berlin. Hi. I just have a question regarding policies in place to sort of prevent abuse of data by companies. So say you're a healthcare company and you want to offer, you offer premium reductions for people that basically share their data with you, which sounds good at first, but then basically forces poorer people to have to share their data with other companies simply to, simply to be able to have enough money at the end of the month. Are there rules in place in Estonia to sort of prevent this kind of nudging of data abuse, or?
First, you need a whole evening to discuss it, because you have the same with connected cars and so on. And if you reduce it to Estonia, it's easier.
Okay, I'll reduce it to Estonia and to the health example you brought, because I think the fields are very different in terms of, let's say, how sensitive is the data and sort of why do we see the public good behind, right? But when it comes to health, currently the situation is very easy. It's not a case at all because we don't actually currently let third parties really provide a service, and the whole sort of the coverage is universal and publicly funded for. So basically, that's only medical professionals have the access and sort of service provision anyway, and there's nothing that sort of people necessarily pay out of the pocket, right? Unless it's small, I don't know, visit fee or whatever. So it doesn't apply yet. But actually, you're asking something that's very close to our sort of next steps, because now we're trying to sort of also redesign our health system, our digital health system, around sort of allowing third parties to come in. And we're exactly starting to debate these same sort of rules. Okay, how far do we go? What kind of sort of practices, business practices to allow? So I don't have a good answer to you yet, but I'm sure next time we meet, I hope to.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Siim Sikkut, Dirk Mahnkopf, for these insightful presentations and the very good discussion afterwards. So please.
Thank you.
So now wine and a little bit of food to everybody, for you as well, of course. Do you want to add something?
No, only that if you still want to ask something, you can come forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions, right?